We're gonna have a little chat today. We have Tulip, aka Ritchie, Michelle. Do you still go by some nuance, or no? You changed that, huh?
I
On
did
Twitter.
change it. It's still my blog name, but
Okay.
it's gonna change eventually when I think of something better.
Okay. So today we're just gonna have a little chat about some some random some random things, but some things we've decided on we could chat about here. All right. So I don't know. We don't need introductions. People know who you are.
Hey, everyone knows who everyone.
All
If
right.
they're watching this, they know who we all are for
I
sure.
know we're the D-trans rock stars, right?
Yeah, I am. I'm that guy from Peaky Blinders. That's exactly who I am. And yeah. Anyway,
So
no,
before we
no,
get
don't include that. Don't include
before
that.
we,
That's
well, I'm not editing much of this. I'm just going to tell you right now. I barely made it through Michelle's thing. I've not been in the mood to edit. So first things first, let's discuss Richie's haircut.
Is it female coded? Is it male coded? Is it up to code? Which code is it? Like, did I get the right QR code in this? I think I did. I think it is up to code.
Well, did you go
And
to
this,
a barber or a salon?
I went to a salon
Mm,
because mm,
that
I
that's
know.
to take some points off there.
I'm sorry. I prefer to get a haircut with scissors, and if you go to like the Turkish barbers, which are everywhere, there's like three hairstyles to pick from, and I was like, no, I want to go to a salon, so I went to a salon, and it's a unisex salon. I'll have you know. So
Okay, we'll add like 2 points back on.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
I personally think
Yeah.
the haircut is nice and doesn't look coded female or coded women or whatever
Okay,
the fuck.
No, it doesn't. You're good.
thank you.
Now what about mine?
Oh, it's like Sinead O'Connor in a
It's
way.
coded Sinead O'Connor. Okay, I'll take
Yeah.
that.
Nothing compares to you.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
was my
So
impression.
therapists. We're all fans of therapists, right?
Are we? I've spent the past 3 years with people trying to get me back into therapy, and then I interview therapists, and then I'm like, maybe not.
Yeah, what for? I mean, there are some people who may be able to learn like some insightful things about themselves from like all it is like a paid friend to listen to you, like for that time being, and without any practical direction, you just swim in your thoughts out. It's like, as you said before, Carol, like confessing to a priest, right? And it's like some, and I think this is why it's kind of probably why people benefit more if they can relate to the person talking to them, which is why when you talk to a lot of detransitioners, if you get, it's really hard to get a group of us together, really hard to get a group. But if you get us one on one with individuals, that's where you have a lot of the good conversations, the breakthrough conversations for yourself and for them. It's where you learn the most, it's the most real, and it's something that you can't really in this. And I think people are desperate trying to get like a therapist to understand this, but a detransitioner is always going to be much, much more helpful to another detransitioner than a therapist ever could, no matter how good they are. And I think
Do you think
really,
do you think that around the like the trauma of transition or dealing with coming out of it or dealing with re-identifying with your sex, that aspect, because I think that part, the like
I think
the
only detransitioners understand the
yeah, yeah,
loss. It's
yeah.
very, very hard for it's very hard for me to sit and talk to someone who, by all accounts, has led a very normal life and they have chose this as their vocation. Everyone's got their own story to tell. Everyone's had trauma, but this is tremendous. This is like tremendous. It's off the scale charts of trauma, and sometimes you need other people to get why you're having these issues or why you're having the thoughts that you're having. Because some of those thoughts can be very self-defeating. I've done this to myself. It's very
Yeah.
catastrophic. It's very isolating. And a lot of these people just really need empowering, you know? You lift off an out just like a tiny percentage of the blame that they hold for themselves, and it makes the world of difference, even if it's just, and I say to people, you can blame yourself 100% all you like, but it's not going to help. But if you lift off even just a percentage of the blame, it'll make all the difference in the world to you.
And I
And
think
that's
the
what,
other thing that's a problem with going back to therapy is that therapists are playing a huge role in this as well.
exactly,
And
yeah.
it's such a different scenario to basically have been this has been done to you by the medical complex and the mental health complex. It's and not many people understand that, and that's such a weird place to be. I do agree with you about detransitioners helping detransitioners. I think in that first year of my, stopping testosterone and re-identifying as a woman and stuff, I was in a very small like group chat with like 5 other women, and the breakthrough, and we all were starting the detransition around the same time. We were all around the same place, and that was just like the most amazing healing breakthrough
Oh, yeah.
period far as all of this, seriously.
I've like meeting with Michelle, going like out and about on that day, you know, where we just like visited the castle, the beach, had a pub lunch and all that sort of thing. Like I loved that day. That was such a sweet day, like just healing, you know what I mean? And
We saw alpacas.
we saw alpacas in Northumberland of all places.
And then
Uh,
we had ice cream. It was the best ice cream ever. Remember?
it literally is the best ice cream in the world, like
Hmm.
literally. Yeah, it was a great day. It was a lovely day, but also Killarney when we were with the others, that was magical. That
Hmm.
was like so good to have people who got you, you know. And it wasn't fake and gay like the not I know we're all gay here, but fake and gay in the internet sense, you know what I mean? Like it is for trans. Like, God, I also realized when I was 2 years old, pre-verbal and had no concept. You know, I also had that. So like it's none of that bullshit. It's just so like, you know, it was good. Yeah, sorry. Rambly.
I, I
What
was with a
about you,
bunch.
Michelle?
I was gonna say I was with a bunch of people in December, and I mean I've been with and in November and in Killarney, so like just multiple different meetings with other detransitioners, and every single time it's like you come away with it being like, oh, I'm actually kind of normal. Like you people make me feel normal for once, and like the rest of the time it just feels like I don't know, we're just in society now. It just feels like the entire world is gaslighting us about the transition thing,
Mm.
trying to insist that it's right for people, like it's like self-harm is correct for some people. So it's just I don't know, being around the other people, being around other people who've gone through the same thing is essential. I think the one thing I want to add is that the difficult part is that we're not trained therapists, and a lot of these people are really, really unwell.
Oh,
Yeah.
And
dude. Yeah.
watching, there are so many people that I'm really scared for, and so it that is kind of a heavy burden on all of us. Also, one that I think we're all willing to take because like we care about each other, but it's rough.
No, I mean there's been cases where, I've come across some young women that I'm like this is not enough for them. They really need, well, and really it's because they have a whole bunch of other real serious mental health issues happening. Like the transition part, yes, was the cherry on top, but there's a whole bunch of crap that they gotta sort through, and it's really hard. At least this is what I've heard from a lot of the uh well, a little bit younger detransitioners that I've like worked with and talked to and stuff. It's the difficulty of needing to work through those other mental health issues but you can't bring up anything to do with your transition or detransition in the therapist's office because it derails the whole conversation. But it's so part of their whole experience that they can't break it apart. But it's almost like they have to break it apart to actually get help for their other stuff. But yeah, I you're correct, Michelle, that there's a lot of people out there that really need like a lot of intense help, and they're not gonna get it, or they're not even gonna go to therapists because they've been burned. I mean, Jesus, the burning is just
Oh,
rough.
Jesus Christ. Like, I mean, especially when you get someone who, again, you're just thinking, oh, I'm a guinea pig all over again. That feeling's horrible. Like, and especially when it's so non-directional. Like, a lot of the males' needs and like are so different because like not that autism isn't prevalent with women, it definitely is too, it's a huge factor, but with the guys I can't understate how much of a big factor autism is for us, or ADHD. And it's like that has such a monumental impact on your thinking. You have to
Okay,
pick
well,
us up.
let's go ahead and jump into that then. What's our opinion on the difference between the male experience and the female experience with reasons for transitioning and just the transition experience and coming out the other side?
I think there is in I think it's kind of part and part sexual trauma from both angles, but one is there's an internalized sort of thing that happens with the guys, whereas with the girls, it's very external, their sort of sexual trauma. It could be from the glares they've had since they were a kid, from grown ass men, or something actually physically happening to them, or whatever like that. Whereas with the guys, because the way we're boys and young men are sort of treated in this arena of, and I'm not talking about like sexual abuse, there there's a lot of stuff that gets internalized and it might be seen as mundane or whatever. And I think peer bullying always seems to play a big part with the guys too. But that's also synonymous with autism or high functioning, not being able to understand your peers. Late or delayed puberties in guys is also a big common one. And with that, whether it's late or early, that either way bigger than all the peers or way smaller. In my case, I was a very late bloomer. That creates a sense of body dysmorphia. It's an inherent disadvantage. There's a lot of physical violence. There's a lot of, escapism, and inability to socially interact. And transition gives you a templated contract on how to navigate the world, but also navigate your and the sexuality part is very multifaceted here. Um, I do think there are gay guys and men, boys, whatever, who are going down this path, but on the male side, it's predominantly straight and bisexual men who are
Hmm.
transitioning.
I mean, that
Um,
seems to be what I see as well.
yeah, but there's when I say transition, I don't want to include it in the bracket of that social transition and separate that from what is straight up fetishistic cross-dressing with the older AGPs who are like wearing the breast forms and all that sort of shit. I'm talking about the ones who are like really believe it, like really, really believe they're because they've got no other like terms for their distress or dysphoria. Sorry, or their suffering other than dysphoria, because dysphoria is a contract for their suffering too. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, you
yeah.
feel
Well, it's a
alien
nice
and
catch-all,
yeah, and
you
it's
know.
also for a lot of us who feel less than as men for whatever reason. And again, that's a very different motivation for the women. And the ROGD thing seems to cluster with girls in social groups, whereas it does happen with the boys. But again, they internalize everything, and by internalize, I mean they take it away from the group and they're away online talking to random people on the internet, and that's how they cluster and socialize, and that's how you get all like the femboy groups and all the like the younger transitioners all coming together. Whereas with the girls, it's very much social in real life as well as
Hmm.
on Tumblr, writing fan fiction, all the few Fujis, whatever they're fucking called, the ones who like to make the sexualized fan fiction, um, and all that sort of thing. So
So are
that is
you
a very quick overview, but it
with
is
the difference between the when you're talking about the boys, are you talking about for example, not being able to be man enough? Is it that whole kind of pressure? I mean, because I've seen
yeah.
this happen where boys and fathers will be rough on their boys unless the boys man up. Like, especially if you're a effeminate boy, that's going to be super hard.
So here's the thing, like my dad was like a miner and a very hardy northeastern guy. And he was certainly like he definitely like he was never ever once violent towards me, and he never hit us or tried to man us up. Or the worst I'd get from him is like calls a big puff like as a joke, or call us soft boy or whatever. You know what I mean? But he kind of accepted I was just different because I was so like affectionate and loving as a young kid. It was, you know, I'm kind of like I'm I'm glad to say that how I am now is a lot like how I was when I was younger, a lot more enthusiastic, a lot more extroverted, a lot more myself, and I can be very caring and very affectionate, and I was just not like the other boys. So my dad
Which
didn't
is
really
not
do that
allowed.
with me.
Boys aren't supposed to be
No,
that way once they reach a certain age.
he wants to reach a
Yeah.
certain age, yeah. And I did get dragged along to all the trying to get us into football and trying to get us into sports, and I just wasn't interested, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the hardest time I got wasn't from my dad. It was probably from my sibling, my brother, and probably from my peers at school,
Mhm.
100%. And
So
it's
when
the
you're
way it
talking,
was.
about autistic boys, that's kind of the whole, you know, where do you fit into the be a man category? Is that kind of what you're talking about? Just that difficulty with
Kind
fitting
of.
into that, and
Yeah,
you don't meet those the criteria or stereotypes of being a real man, so they go the other way and think maybe they're women.
yeah, there's a little bit of that, but there's also like understanding your sort of sense of self, your sexuality, um, especially when you're same sex attracted, because that can really fuck up your brain.
Yeah.
Um, I went to school at the back end of the AIDS epidemic, and it was like what Section 28, which was you can't in schools weren't allowed to promote or educate anything on LGBT. So it was like a complete polar opposite for what we have now.
Oh,
Like
yes. That
like
pendulum swung.
yeah, it's like it sounds like, oh, that's exactly what people want, but it meant that gay teachers were getting fired and
Yeah. Yeah.
all that sort of thing. Like if I went out and came out with a teacher, I'm like, I think I'm gay, they'll be like, can't discuss it with you. Like so it was a very hard time to grow up as a gay person in the 90s, despite what happened. And also our older generations had been decimated, so I had no role models,
Hmm.
the guys. So it's we're kind of in a way we've been starting again, and because we're all a lot of us who are autistic take that very literal that, I like men, so I must be a woman. I'm not like the other men. I must be a woman. I don't like
Yeah.
football. I must be a woman. Or, it's very,
The
very
categories
literal.
get very because you need a path,
Yeah,
right? You need like a
true.
rules to follow or something.
And I also think there's something to be said for early exposure to pornography, which
Oh
definitely
yeah.
happened. I
Yeah.
was like 9 or 10 first time I saw like proper porn, and not that because I was seeking it out, and just I saw it. Um, and then it became a regular thing for me about 12 or 13. That's when it started becoming a regular occurrence, and it was like I don't think a 12 or 13-year-old should, even a 10-year-old, you know what I mean? And it's
No,
just
yeah,
like
yeah.
that led to so many other things, because without pornography, you don't have all the forums and the chat rooms that not all necessarily 18 plus, but they're linked in with that. It's very convoluted, that one. Like the games, and like it's just, it messes with your brain
Mhm.
in a way. And a lot of males have this, not all the males who transition, obviously, but a lot of the more nerdier, softer ones, the more introverted, definitely had that sort of being hypnotized by the internet and having an absolutist response to everything in the life, the trauma at school. Like, I mean, I got absolutely fucking tortured in high school, like literally tortured. I don't even want to call it bullying. It was like really brutal. Um,
Yeah.
and those sort of things really do fuck with you. And I don't think you then said, "Oh, I must be a woman." What happens is you get so fucked up from it, you get traumatized, and then along comes gender dysphoria that says, if you feel that you hate your body, or you take risks, or you're very depressed and anxious, and you feel like, you've got no sense of self, you could be in the wrong body. And it's like, oh, holy shit, this is me. Oh my God, this is exactly the life I've just led. And there it is for you. And then you go up professional. Hey, I've just had this really like homophobic like upbringing, actually. But can you tell me if I am trans? Because I think so. And they're like, hell yes, sir. I
Well,
mean,
hey, if you
lady,
think
you are my lady. You
the
are
whole
most
the whole
certainly.
thing is, if you think you're trans, you probably are, right? Because cis people don't think about these kind of things. Only trans people think about these kind of things. At least that's
Only
what
a
I heard.
Scientologist would think that, he is a better narrated by L. Ron Hubbard, who something about thetans and zetans. Never mind. I
Michelle,
don't want to give away too many secrets.
what do you think do you see a difference between the men and the women in transition, and the boys and girls?
So I can really only speak for like what I went through. And I think that experiences with autism are actually really similar between both
Okay.
of the sexes. Maybe not like super similar, but like the whole thing of just feeling alienated, feeling dissociated from your body, having really black and white thinking about everything. Like, oh well, if I'm not feminine, then I must be a man, kind of thing. And like, obviously, I didn't think that when I was younger because I didn't have those ideas presented to me. I would have totally transitioned when I was younger if they were presented to me when I was younger. They just weren't. Um, maybe maybe not right away, just because I was also bullied. I don't think I was bullied to the extent that Richie was bullied. I think the way that girls bully and the way that boys bully are very different.
Yeah.
But I was socially isolated for that, like just for being different,
Well,
and I
that's
didn't
how
know.
girls bully.
Yeah,
They
right.
isolate. Yeah. Yeah.
Isolate, or like I would walk down the hallway and then they'd like point and like ew kind of thing, or
Hmm.
like pretend that I was gross, stuff like that. Um, so I just felt like a disgusting person, like just subhuman, essentially. Um, and
Because I do hear
yeah,
for the women that a lot of the, especially like from certain sects of people, where they're like, oh, this is all because of what men have done to women, and like the gays. And I'm like, yeah, but there's also something to be said for peer abuse. Like, how your relationship with your peers is so friggin' important. And if you like, whether that's the affirmation that you're a girl because all your friends are girls and you like the same things and you're very similar behaved, or like you're getting horrifically treated by them, however that transpires, because your pain is your pain, regardless of you saying how bad it doesn't matter if you say, but I need to phrase this carefully. If you say that it was worse than what I had, that's not true, because it was worse for you. That's the scale that you're working at, not anyone else's, because you can find a million people to either side that had it worse or better than you. You know what
Yeah,
I
it's kind
mean?
of relative
Yeah,
to the
exactly. It's like
individual.
you just have to, acknowledge that that was painful. And I think the peer abuse is definitely a factor, a huge factor,
mhm.
probably more overlooked than any of the other ones?
When I first
might be.
detransitioned, probably one of the first things that I started writing about, because I was writing immediately, because I was like, I need to process this. But one of the first things I wrote about was a relationship between someone who was my best friend, a girl, when I was 11, 12. And the fact that I felt like, first of all, I think I had a crush on her. So the us not being friends anymore kind of I think there was a deeper meaning to that than I was willing to admit at that time, or I didn't understand at that time. But at any rate, being rejected by her also meant that I was getting rejected by all of the other girls, because she was the only one that would actually put up with me. She was like
Mhm.
the one friend that I had, and then you lose the one friend, and now everyone is like, oh, now it's open season. It's open season on Michelle now. So um, that was one of the first things I thought about, was that this is one of the reasons that I transitioned. One of the big things is like a really early rejection from other women.
Mhm.
And I don't hear that. I have heard it from some people, but I don't hear that a lot. But I think I agree that I think the peer abuse is more.
So, can I just pick up on that?
Yeah.
I had, whilst I was getting rejected from my male peers, I was getting accepted by a lot of my female peers. Did you experience an inverse of that or not?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
So I
I
was
was about I
rejected
was
by
a,
everyone.
I was
Everyone.
about to say that I relate a lot to the whole peer abuse, not having friends thing. Same story. Um, and rejection from women. Yes, I mean, not only from the most important woman in my life, which was my mother, but from my aunts too. I didn't fit into their category of what a woman was, and I got that rejection and very early. And for me, I don't know how it is for you guys, but for me, I think my more masculine way of being and my lesbianism played a huge role in that separation, because the women in my mom's family were all very centered around being there for men, getting boyfriends and being married and having kids and doing like was all very super important, and that wasn't important to me.
I think my family knew I was like retarded in a way, and I'm sorry to say that. So I have like all the siblings, and they went off, got married, and had kids, and I don't think I ever had that laden expectation. I think it was there, but it was like they also accepted at very least he's gonna turn out weird, if
Mm.
not like, let alone gay. He's just like different, like from the others, you know. And I think they were like very accepting of it. There was no real pressure on my end. And also I think the fact that my brother and sister both had children by the time I transitioned, um, kind of did take some of that pressure off me in a way. I was like, I'm not killing the family bloodline or anything like
Yeah.
that. And you know what I mean? It was very much like that. So again, it's like a very different experience, but it's also similar too. It's so
Well,
strange.
I think there's a lot of commonality with the neurodivergent side of it, right?
Oh yeah,
Because
like yeah.
um oh yeah, I didn't know for the most of my life that I have ADHD. I was diagnosed in my mid-30s, but once I was diagnosed and understood it, I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. Like, and especially kids with that kind of thing. I mean, I couldn't understand why I couldn't make friends. I didn't understand I felt like I was missing something there. I was just missing some kind of connection that other people could do that I couldn't do. And I also realized I irritated people, and I also didn't know why I irritated people. And so that's a lot. And then you hate yourself though. You blame yourself and you hate yourself because you don't understand why you're evidently doing something wrong. And I think that really plays into self-hate, which then plays into the dysphoria. And then if you have this idea that you can become a totally different person, and which is your true self, it's not this other person, that's so enticing. I mean, for anybody who suffered, right?
It's an unfair deal, I think. It's too like it's also too good to be true, you know? When Kia everything, the Kia is actually to become someone else. You know, it's like you get to become yourself by becoming someone else.
I know. You get
And
to
I
become
had this
yourself by having the doctors go.
yeah, and I had this discussion with a renowned trans activist on my Twitter saying that, you know, you really kind of have to hate yourself to transition in the first place. Because what you're doing is you're saying, I hate Richard. I was never Richard. I'm actually this person that no one's ever met before. Because, and this is the person I'm gonna love. This is the person I'm gonna invest all my time and future in. Is this person that I am creating on the fucking fly? Because that's
Yeah.
what you do.
And now
You're
Richard's
not
dead.
Richard is dead and he's never coming back. Death before detransition, etc., etc., etc.
Do you think transition is a form of suicide?
Ooh, ooh, it's a slow burning suicide. Well, you have killed your. The argument is, oh, we're the same person, blah blah blah. I'm like, you are the same. That is the point, actually. You are the same person, right?
Right.
But you are changing your identity. You're changing your name. You're changing how people view and refer to you. Because if you weren't, and they know it, and that really fucks them off because they know it, and I hope they fucking watch this, motherfuckers, right? Is listen, is you are changing your perception of who you are, what it means to be you, and what other people's perception of. That is not you becoming yourself. That is you becoming someone else, you know?
Yeah.
So I really do call folly. It is folly when they say, I'm the same person. Then don't change your name. Don't change your pronouns. If you want to go out and dress as you please, or wherever, then you know you can go out and do that. No one's fucking saying you can't. But what I'm saying is, you are changing your entire self by
Hmm.
changing your name, clothes, identity, voice, how you walk,
Hmm.
everything. What your interests are. The number of, especially with like the older trans, uh, quote unquote women who I know. I'm sorry for saying that word, but whatever. Those ones who are also like, you know, the talk about their identity as if it's a person they're about to meet. I wonder what the thingy of me likes. I wonder, da 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 da, and
Yeah,
you know,
that's a weird concept.
but it's just the height of dissociation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's like, but they're like, but I've never been happier because you're someone else, motherfucker.
Well, because
Like,
you're
why?
pretending, you're masking, and that's
Yeah, why
um
would you be happy as your old self if you had such a traumatic time?
I think for me it definitely was a form of suicide. I mean, I'd struggled with suicide and suicide, like, ideation. I'd struggled with self-harm. I'd struggled with doing stupid shit in order to like punish myself or hurt myself or maybe kill myself on accident. So it's like, yeah, that was just another form of self-harm. What about you, Michelle?
I mean, I was self-harming when I was 11 years old, right?
Okay.
So like it
Yeah.
started really, really early. It was just one when I was 11, just like one incident. And then when I was like 14, 15, it became something that I was doing over and over. Um, I'm actually almost 1 year, only 1 year clean from self-harm. So yay. Um, but like so my point with that is it has continued. It continued all the way to I was 35 last year. So it remained a thing throughout my entire life. And the transition was definitely a form of self-harm. Was it also a suicide? Yeah, I think it was. I think it was a suicide also. It was I had a suicide attempt the year before. It was a half-hearted attempt, but like I wanted to die very much
Mhm.
the year before. And then 3 months later I come out and tell
Yeah.
people that I'm a man, right?
Yeah.
So like, and
The story's always the same. Like I was on my way to killing myself, and I thought, why didn't I kill myself? I can transition. It's like
Yeah.
killing yourself with extra steps, right? You
yeah.
know. But that is something I always hear, and I think I also sorry for jumping in, but it's like I do relate to that. You know, you're suicidal. You've got suicidal idealization and you're worried for yourself that if I don't do something, I am gonna die by my own hand. Like you really do believe that.
So
And
transition's just a way to contain that in a way. It's a way to focus that
yeah,
self-harm or that suicide stuff, right?
yeah. So here's the odd thing. Now, after what? When did I start this venture? 2013? 11 years after the fact. I feel like I am pretty much back to where I started. Like, not only do I pretty much look the age that I started, which is terrible,
Yeah.
but not only do I have like I just kind of feel like I'm back there. You know what I mean? I have like all the old stuff was there waiting for us. I got wisdom. I've got learning from this, don't get me wrong. But you're just going back to the old problems that you had before.
Yeah.
Because when you transition, as you said, you package them away and you kill yourself and you shove it away and you're this new person, you know?
It's like creating it's like when you get a foreign object in your body of like and it creates like a little casing around it. Like if you get, I had a piece of glass I got stuck in my hand that just like made a
Yeah.
little case and it's kind of like that. Transitions like that. You're like, oh, let me just take all this shit and just put it right in here. And then it's okay. But the problem is it's going to work its way out eventually.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I have a question, which
Yeah.
is, when we detransitioned, is that also a form of suicide, or is it like a resurrection? Do we kill a part of ourselves in that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you do invest a lot of time and energy in this new self. Um, and you have a lot of plans and hopes and dreams, and it might be naive, it might be within reason, but you still have this life laid out and how you think it's going to be years down the line. And you do go through a grief process because the thing with transition is it wasn't all bad, you know?
Mhm.
There were certainly a lot of good parts about it. There are certain parts that obviously I think are easy to miss, especially when you're in the height of ignorance about everything. And you are only experiencing the quote unquote like the joy and the euphoria of being affirmed and really believing it and just so blissfully ignorant of the fact that everyone's playing along with you. Um,
I do sometimes miss the ignorance.
oh
Don't we
It's true.
all?
God, it's the cipher
Plug me
moment in
back
the
in.
Matrix.
Plug me
Yeah,
back in. Yeah.
Yeah,
I want
really.
to be rich. I want to be rich. You know the cipher scene. Yeah.
See,
Ignorance is bliss.
for
Yes.
me, the detransition really felt like a setting down a really heavy bag I'd been carrying for a long time. That's what it felt like. To me, it really felt like, okay, I'm just gonna stop doing all of this now. Like everything, I'm just gonna stop trying to hold it together and just let it fall.
That's
Because
interesting you said that, Carol, because the guy, and I'm sorry for interrupting. I'm terrible
no,
with this. I've also had two gins because I said I wasn't gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm also gonna have to get another one soon. But anyway, Andy, I've talked to about him before. He had a brief stint on Twitter, and he got absolutely murked, like no end, because he did an interview with Benjamin Boyce, I think, and he was talking about his like because he's one of these like self-confessed declaring AGPs who have like made it their sort of Bible in a way, not in a obsessive way, but in a like this is most certainly it, and that's the end of the conversation there. And I'm like, there's certainly truths there for sure, but is it the end of the conversation? No, and I think there are many holes in it. Anyway, he said to me one of my pivotal moments, I was still trans identified. It was the end of 2021, and I was talking to him, and he just said, I woke up one day and I said, I can't do this anymore. I didn't, and it took us a long time to realize what the this was because I felt it too. I felt that I can't do this anymore, and I realized it was lying.
yeah,
That's what I was doing. We're just lying, lying to ourselves, lying to other people, lying about our appearance because I don't know about you, but I took many, many selfies. I and just picked the exact right one, the one that complimented me perfectly in the lighting. Not that I was, because my bullshitting myself was, I don't use filters. I'm not like the other trannies, you know.
I'm
I
I'm
I
the truest and the prettiest tranny of them
I'm the
all.
truest and pretty. But what was actually happening is I'm like, you know what I mean? Like it's like the angle's all off. Whereas now I'm like, I make sure to make like take pictures head on. You know what I mean? Like try not to lie, not do this bullshit, like we all do, or like going, oh, like look at my cheekbones. But I do have killer cheekbones, so go fuck yourself, whatever. Not used to. I'm just talking about the haters out there. Whatever.
I don't know. For me, the part I miss, I think, most about being transitioned, or and being on testosterone was the ability to hide. It's much easier to be perceived by most people as a white dude than it is a butch lesbian, especially. Yeah. So I think that's the part I miss most is life. Life was easier. I could get it. I mean, when women like myself, butch lesbians, transition and say it's much easier, or when women transition and say it's much easier and they can be their true selves, it is. And in many ways, I could be my truer self because the way I carried myself, the way I demanded, a room, the way I talked, the way I didn't smile a lot, all those things that, are coded male, I could get away with and do and be respected for if I appeared as a male. But if I appeared as female, no. Now I'm a bitch. Now I'm uppity. I need to smile more. So that was, I miss that.
I became when I sort of desisted, I became invisible in a very familiar way where they're not rushing all the doors open. They're not smiling at you. And I think this is the difference between our motivations for transition because we were like, we'll go from being very mistreated to being treated like very delicately in a way. It's very stereotypical and cringe, but all of a sudden people are treating you in this very kind and delicate way, like holding doors open for you. It's all very misogynistic, blah blah blah, right? Okay. No denying that. But it is all very like you get you get you get a lot of attention, it's very positive, you get all this sort of eyes on you in a way that you've never had before, and then you just do transition and it all goes away. However, something else takes its place for the likes of me, whereas most people just see me as a young guy. And there's like this playfulness that goes on with a lot of people. Like I don't like people are very sociable to me now in a way that they weren't before, which is nice, but also I don't know where that fits in here. But also, I will say that the level of aggression from men is like, I forgot all about it. I completely forgot this. Like, the
Yeah.
older men look at younger men like they're about to fucking kill them half the time, and I forgot about that. And I don't know why that is. They just do. They always look really pissed off at the younger guys, and I think there's like this dominance thing going on. But
Pecking
there's
order.
also yeah, but there's also this like jokingness. There's like a lot of like, you're just a young lad, whatever. And I'm like, mate, I'm like fucking middle aged, brother. You know what I mean? It's like
What about you, Michelle? How did you feel when you were transitioned? Were you
As you
able to like pass, right? And kind of hide in
Yes,
a way?
I was able to pass, and I still sometimes get people calling me sir, but like it's a lot less than it was a year ago. Even it's like the longer I go, the more, and I think it's that part of it is me becoming more comfortable. Um, because I think when I was in transition, like it was sort of the same with you, is where I didn't smile very much, especially not in public, and like so those were actually some of the reasons that I feel like I transitioned in the first place. It was like stuff like getting rid of all those social expectations that are
Yeah.
placed on women, do this, do that. Um, and I feel like I'm androgynous enough that I don't get attention from people. Like I don't get catcalled, for example, and I think that's because people can't quite tell, and they don't see boobs anyway. So like, there are hints. The hints are not there for them to do it, so they just don't.
Hmm.
So in a weird way, I'm still sort of like hiding a little bit. Um,
It makes me think of how there is this very different element happening. Richie's talking about getting attention for being perceived as female, and Richie, you think it's a positive attention, but if you're actually born female, you're probably not going to think that's a positive attention because all that attention, especially from men, is going to come with the tie of sex. They're
yeah,
doing it
you
because they
validation.
want to fuck you.
you
Right.
don't
It's
understand that. as a male. You just see the good bits.
Yeah, well, yeah, I hear that a lot from the dudes who think this is the better idea, that women have it so great, all this attention, everything. Like,
Yeah,
you realize the attention we're getting comes with a lot of fucking risk. Like, especially if you
yeah.
piss off a dude who wants to give you attention and you say no, because you know,
And then you
I'm
deal with it like you say you give that you're in my situation, you give that attention, and then the clock that you're a trans. Now all of a sudden you're
yeah,
eligible to get knocked the fuck out, right?
no, right,
And
yeah,
people don't they don't weigh these things up properly, and I think there was an element of I can't see what obviously you've experienced as a woman all your life with like the way men jeer at women and all that sort of thing. All you see is being a hurt individual who is now getting noticed and loved, and it's like,
yeah,
how can you not see the benefits in that? You're drunk on it. You do, like the validation, the attention, and a lot of like people always criticize people who go out and seek attention. I'm like, the reason people go out and seek attention is because they're wounded, right? And people are like, oh, they're attention seeker, and like, yeah, because they're probably wounded. There's a reason for that. There's a
yeah,
reason they're
no.
saying, "Look at me," or whatever. They might be assholes about it, but I often feel, you know, there's there is something more to it than that.
How
So
how how big of a influence do you think your sexuality had in your decision or feeling about transition or dysphoria, whatever that you want to call it?
massively,
Yeah,
oh, hugely. I would
Michelle,
say, mm,
I'm the opposite, but
you're the opposite.
where I so it's still weird for me to like just like look back on it and feel like it was part of it. Because I never felt like it was part of it when I transitioned, and then when I detransitioned, I was like, this is everything. But I don't. I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But when I was before I transitioned, right before I was identifying as asexual,
Mm,
because I'd had multiple relationships with men, and they weren't going well, like sexually. I just didn't want it. I was with someone for 3 years and we had sex less than 10 times. And I don't know, like, I didn't realize that that wasn't normal until I talked to other people about it, kind of thing. They're like, that's not normal. Um, and like, there was even a time where he was like, this isn't normal. Why aren't you attracted to me? And I was like, I'm just not sexually. So then I thought, oh, that means I'm asexual. It doesn't mean that I'm attracted to women. Of course not. But so I went the wrong direction there. But when I the day that I detransitioned, actually, like that moment, sort of like the epiphany moment where I was just like, that's it. Like, I miss female solidarity. Part of that was me. I wanted to date women, and I
yeah.
didn't want to date women as a weird androgynous non-binary person. I wanted to date
Yeah.
women as a woman. So,
You wanted to be honest. You wanted to
yes,
be honest.
yeah,
Yeah. And I have to say that my obviously my transition had a whole lot to do with being gay or being a lesbian, and specifically being more masculine, because that was a huge component of wanting to feeling disgusting and wrong, and oh, it makes sense if you're a dude. Everything I
yeah.
do makes sense if I'm a dude.
I feel like mine
mm.
had more to do with being autistic than it did with the sexuality. But I
Okay.
think being autistic messed up my perception of my own sexuality.
But don't you think that the transition and all, like, this trans ideology with all this non-binary and all this, asexual thing really fucked up your ability to like figure out your sexuality too?
Yes,
Oh.
100%. Yeah. Because like before I transitioned, I was quote unquote asexual, but I was only dating men. So it was like I was a straight woman. And then I transitioned and I was a quote unquote gay man. But I also knew I was attracted to women. So like when there was like one situation where it came up where a woman was interested and my friend was like, oh no, he's gay. And I was just like, I'm into her though. So like, why did you tell her that? Um, and then,
You was right though. You are gay.
yeah, that was the weird part, right? It was like, I remember
I'm sorry.
Casey.
One moment. I'll be right back. 1 second.
Yep. Should we wait? We'll wait.
No, go ahead. Finish.
No? Oh, I was gonna say, I talked to Casey about this once, and she said that she also quote unquote LARPed as a gay man, and she said it was a way to be gay without being gay.
Mm.
So
That is a whole nother topic that I've hit on a
yes.
little bit, and it seems to melt people's minds when you say no, there's actually a lot of same-sex attracted women, lesbian women, who through transition identify as gay men.
Yes.
And there's like a handful of reasons, but they're all there, you know.
There's a bunch of them. Yeah.
It's an interesting phenomenon, and I don't think, I don't know, I take some issue with people who get really super super rigid about the sexuality thing. Like, it's not way on the trans side, and it's not clear on this. You if you're really gay, you've never ever would have ever touched the opposite sex. This is stupid. Like that, you know.
When
Those,
very very shortly after I detransitioned, I tried to join Tumblr again, which is always a bad idea. Don't just never Tumblr, never. But I was on there and I was like, I want to try and find some detransitioners, and like I followed one that was a lesbian, and like one of the first things that got reblogged onto my screen was someone saying that if you've ever had sex with a man, then you're definitely not a lesbian because it would never happen. And I was
never.
like, I was brainwashed into thinking I was the opposite sex. Why couldn't I have been brainwashed into thinking I was attracted to men?
Dude, you know what, this whole gold star bullshit thing about like that you know you can only be a real lesbian if you've never ever touched a guy. This comes out of the fucking internet, and young people not living in reality and not actually having experiences in reality with other people. Because if you go talk to any older lesbians, they'll laugh at your face if you say that to them. Because
Didn't
so
that gold
many were
star
actually with them.
wasn't the gold star thing around in the 80s and 90s like a lot though?
Well, so I came out in 2001, and yes, it was around, but it was kind of like somewhat of a joke in a way, but not like mean. Just it was what some lesbians. We always looked at the lesbians that never had sex with guys and managed to get out as like, good for you, awesome job, you're the gold star. But also, most of us had sex with men, so it wasn't a big deal. Like, it was just like, didn't matter. Like, nobody was, not going to date somebody because of it, or tell them they're not gay because they had sex with the opposite sex. A lot of gay men had sex with opposite sex as well, because so many of us
Yeah.
tried to be straight. you know
Yeah, I could never do it, like, you know, but when it came to the guys, it was different. Yeah. I
so
do think
so how did you
sexuality is
think?
important. Sorry,
Oh
what
yeah,
do
I
I
was
think?
wanting to go back and have you say how you felt like the gay thing had impact on, where it influenced you transitioning.
Um, well, I think it led into my OCD because there was part of my OCD was like, if I don't do this, I'm gay. I had a lot of fear about being gay. I had a crush on my friend. And I had a lot of like self-hatred, and I just didn't want to be gay. Like, I just didn't want to be it, and I got very depressed. And I rather than like I didn't even have the energy to pursue like a fucking fake relationship with a woman. Like, I didn't even want to do that. I was like, I'm just gonna sit inside and play World of Warcraft until
Of just
I
avoid it,
become
right?
the largest man in Britain, like just constantly like eating and drinking Pepsi and all that, and just raiding all day and night, glorious existence. And I just hated my body, hated myself, and it wasn't until I transitioned that I permitted myself to start seeing men.
Ah,
Um, because that's what it was. Because it was like, oh, I don't need to come out as gay because it's a suit, right? And it's like, it's such a coward's way to come out, you know, for me at least. But I had the "Are you gay?" question a lot of times before transition. I was like, no,
yeah.
mother, I am not a homosexual. How dare you insinuate this? You know, like, but obviously not like that. But I was just like, everyone knew before me, and
I hate that, by
yes,
the way. That so sucks. When you're not ready to come out, when you're not there yet, and everybody around you is basically making fun of you about it. Like, I got that too. I was like 19, and people were like, "You're a lesbian, huh, Carol? When are you gonna come out?" And I'm just like, no, I'm just trying to figure shit out. I'm like, totally no.
Yeah, I had it online a lot, like, especially in gaming groups. Like everyone would like call them as gay, like specifically me, and like I'm not gay. Like you just said that so gaily, like it's like you know what I mean. It was just very and I don't have that much of a camp voice as well. I've got a little bit of a camp voice, but yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, I think it definitely with it, I think it plays a role, right? You know, because what I don't know, maybe the older generation understood this more, but what gay person hasn't had an issue with kind of hating themselves in a way because they're gay, you know? And even if you did, even if your family was accepting, even if you really never got, you know, the shit kicked out of you emotionally or physically in the world by your peers, you're still othered. You know, you're still kind of an outcast in a way. You know,
yeah,
most people are getting married and having children and doing this very, you know, this thing, and you're not. And also, it's harder for you to find relationships, harder for you to find love interests and have sex with people. You can't just walk up to anybody. You can't see somebody and just be like, "Hey," there's this whole thing where you're like, "Well, I don't want to like, you know, like you can't just go hit on any old guy. You could get fucking killed." You know, and a lesbian can't just hit on any woman because that's gonna backfire. Oftentimes the violence will come from the men, from the boyfriends or husbands that might be around. But yeah, it's this weird place even if you didn't get a ton of shit, I think it's still a hard place to be. Yeah, the world's gotten better, but homophobia still exists, obviously.
yeah. Um, that I do think it does play a part of it, but I think like many things in this, it's not the penultimate thing, and it's not the singular reason. It may have had a lot of influence and knock-on factors, but I think it takes a lot more than just your sexuality to get you to transition. I think there is a desire to want to hate and escape yourself. There's trauma. There's also not always, but almost always there's an issue with the same sex parent and a close attachment to the opposite. Not always, but a lot often with the guys. A lot of the guys are like mama's boys, like your typical like gay lads or bi lads, whatever, or soft guys who aren't who are straight as well. You know,
Hmm.
um, the ones who are a little bit more artistic and creative, introverted, emotional, not fighters, clumsy, not sporty, nerds, you know.
Hmm.
It's all the same camp. Sorry, Michelle. You go ahead. You've been quiet. You need
Oh
to
no.
speak.
Uh,
I think the only thing I was gonna say was that like I had the experience of like growing up and being like this was early 2000s. Me and Richie are the same age almost, so same time period. But like
I'm like
in
currently like about sorry, I'm about to reach the 2 years older than you, Mark, very shortly.
you're about to reach the 1 year where they're currently the same age.
Ah,
We're both 36 right now. But sorry, but you put me off track. I was gonna say I grew up as like the straight ally kind of thing. So with like people around me, I had like my small friend group was women that eventually almost all of them came out as either bi or lesbian. Um, and um, so I grew up in sort of that space of where like, no, gay is fine, gay is okay, but I'm not gay. So
yeah.
I don't know if that's a similar experience, but like that was my experience growing up. And because like I don't know what it was because like it externally I was okay with it, but internally I was not okay with it. Um, but since none of you know any of my friends, I did have one friend that was like she identified as straight at that time, and in my opinion, she was totally fine with like gay men, but she was really, really bothered by gay women. Really bothered. And then I found
mm,
out in adulthood that she had a relationship with a woman for like several years. So like
interesting.
um there's I think there's something
Projection.
that going on there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the people who tend to have the biggest problem with like this are the ones who have got their own issues, quite obviously. Which is why we get so much shit from the trans activists. It's like, I
I
have
guess
regret. I hate you. Fuck you. And it's like, I have doubt. I hate you. And it's like, okay.
I guess the way I look at it with the whole gay thing is that oftentimes gay people are gender nonconforming, and also just being homosexual is gender nonconforming anyways. So I think that's where the trans stuff kind of fits in there like a key, and it kind of messes up yourself as a gay person. And I think I especially see it in the teenagers who are trying to figure their sexuality out now. It seems to be definitely more of an issue with them because now they have a million of these fucking options that actually half of them don't make sense. But now a butch lesbian, 16-year-old butch lesbian can go, oh, I'm a dude. Much easier than could have 20 years ago.
Yeah. And I think, again, I think in terms of impact in gays versus straight people on the male side is fundamentally different from the female side.
I
I
think
think
so. Because I mean
I
the
really
lesbians
do.
really just got hit really hard with this, it seemed
Mm.
like.
Yeah, I think for the guys it's mainly the gay and bisexual nerds who got hit really hard with this. Like it's not as a lot of the groups would like to proclaim, like it's all the I do see a lot of effeminate young boys getting transitioned.
Mm,
But that's a bit of a phenomenon. That's not the mainstream. The mainstream is you got a nerdy boy who's quite isolated. He might be gay. He's probably going to be bi. He's probably going to be straight more than gay. And he has been a horrible time, not always, horrible time by his peers, whatever, is isolated, is hyper fixated on one thing, normally the internet, anime, whatever, has their own little communities on there. And that is a very different pipeline from, say, a teenage girl or a young adult woman who's going into this, who's like, oh, I can identify my way out of a lot of the issues that I've been having. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. And
Um,
obviously it's not a conscious thing either. You're not consciously saying you're going to identify out of it. It's just it's what you do.
Yeah, yeah. I know a lot of this sounds like, I'm gonna like especially when you get critique on these thoughts, because people think, what, that's what you thought? Like, obviously not that
Well,
black and
no, not
white,
at the time. That's not what I
dickhead.
thought at all.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Jesus.
But
I
I
think
see what you're saying, and I think to sum it up, I do think that if we look at just our three stories and compare them, you can see that kind of at the base is um, we were kind of ostracized a bit as kids and maybe even into adulthood, and we had just self-hate. Like that's the base there. There's a lot of other stuff there's obviously a lot of stuff plays into people doing that, but ultimately it's I don't like who I am. I don't like my existence. How do I change it?
Mhm.
Would you agree with
I
that or?
Yeah. Sorry,
yes.
Michelle.
No, one of the things I was gonna say is that I feel like in the past, people who transition, especially on the men's side, there was that sort of like dichotomy of HSTS, AGP. So there's two different types of men that transition, and that's it. That's it. And there are people who still think that's the only thing there is, but I feel like the internet, just the internet by itself, has changed that entire dynamic, and
I
that's in
agree.
the last 20 years. So, and I feel like anyone who doesn't see that is just completely missing that part of it.
Yeah.
Um, the
No, I'm
the
with you
two
100%.
things, this is I'm quoting. I think this is Lauren Black. She wrote something about how the two things that contribute to quote unquote gender dysphoria are dissociation and rumination, and those are the two main things that everyone seems to have in common, is that you're dissociated from your body, you're disconnected from your body, and the other thing is you think about it constantly. You have a tendency to hyper focus on things, and I do
OCD,
think that
autism.
it's all those things, yeah. And I think that that is consistent in almost every single person I've ever seen that transitioned, and the internet makes people dissociate. So
It
Yes.
makes all those things worse. And even if you don't
Yes.
have these things to begin with, it can make you get that way.
I've been saying it for fucking ages. The internet is like a key in this for the younger generations, millennials and Gen Zs alike.
Well, I mean, I think even for some older too, right? It's the internet's been able to spread this like a virus, basically. You know,
Yeah.
spread these ideas and this dissociation. And no matter how old you are, if you get too down a rabbit hole online, you're gonna dissociate. Like,
How old are you
you
now,
know,
Carol?
43.
Does that not technically make you a millennial?
I'm right on that cusp
Yeah.
between Gen X and millennial.
You're an
Yeah.
honorary millennial in this.
An elder
Yes.
millennial.
An elder
Elder
millennial.
millennial.
Yes.
I'm like core millennial, like right bang in the middle of millennialism.
Yeah. So, well, this has been a good chat. Thank you guys so much
It
for
has
coming
been.
on the channel and talking. I think we solved all the problems, and now if everybody just does what we
did it.
say, we can sort this all out.
I think it would be
Done.
good to have some sort of like live Q&A sometime and get some
Okay.
audience interaction on the go, because I think like we could sit and talk about some shit like this before, but I think there's a lot of good questions that often come out of the chat, so
That's a
it'd be
good
good to have
idea.
like an open thing. We'll plan it. We'll do it properly. I'll be sober. I won't be drinking gin. It'll be fabulous. I'll have a slightly longer hair, but I should still be able to see. I promise I'll get a cut again. Anyway, it's
Oh, go
been my
get it.
pleasure.
Just go get it shaved. The rule is everybody must have a shaved head. New Colt.
New Colt.
New Colt.
Let's go.